Okay, so once you create your event inside the platform and you log into your event, you get this fancy little sidebar along the left-hand side. And we see this sidebar as the primary order in which you're probably going to want to create the different pieces and parts of your event. So in this video, we're going to cover the event submenu or the event section, as well as the submenus within it, which are settings, statistics, and template. Now, the event settings page looks very, very similar to the page that you would have used to create your event. It's where you can name your event, where you can select your unique URL as that your attendees will be accessing your event at. For now, the only subdomain or the only domain that you can use is obv.io, but in the coming weeks and months, we anticipate additional subdomains to be selectable here. This is a unique URL across the entire platform, not just within your events, but across all events on Obvio. So if somebody else were to try and create an event called update.obv.io, they wouldn't be able to because we're using that for this event. The next field down is event time zone. Now, event time zone is almost completely unimportant to your attendees, but it's very important to you and other people who may be modifying the event over the course of the weeks or months leading into it. So what this feature does is it sets the time zone for your event so that anywhere that you are modifying a time, such as in agenda items or in display rules or in the published date and time for blog posts, when you are in the editor, you are editing those times in the time zone that you've selected. So for this event, it's the New York time zone or Eastern time zone. And that means that if I was on a computer that was in the Pacific time zone and I were to modify a blog post publish date as an example, I wouldn't have to do the math to get it into New York time if that's the time we are all speaking on as it relates to this event. So your attendees don't ever see this time zone because all of those times that your attendees are going to see are in their time zone, wherever their computer is registered. But this is important if you have multiple people modifying your dashboard. Next up, we have start date and end date and time. And these again are two fields that your attendees never see. So you don't need to make these the exact start and end time of your event. In fact, I would highly recommend you not do that. You want to set your start and end date of your event a couple of days before your event is actually set to start. And the end date and time, I usually make it the day after my event is set to end. Now, here's the reason why. Obvio allows you access to our Zoom platform, right? Our Zoom accounts. So you don't need to have your own Zoom licenses to host your event. But you can only access those Zoom rooms or Zoom meetings when the event is active. So by setting your start day to a couple of days before the event, it allows you the possibility of testing Zoom and testing your setup to make sure that you're comfortable with how the platform works. So best practices from my perspective, like I said, a couple of days before the event and then a couple of days after. There's no budget implications to having a slightly longer event. So having that event, instead of it be, let's say, a 3-day event, show up in Obvio as a 6-day event doesn't affect you from a cost perspective. Next up is the anticipated amount of attendees. And this is just a rough number. So again, it has to be more than 0. But beyond that, there's no cost associated with this number. You could, in theory, put 9,999 or whatever number you want in here. and it doesn't actually charge you more. This is a little statistic piece that we use internally at Obvio to have a sense of how large events upcoming are going to be so that we can make sure that we have the right resources available. And it's one of many pieces of information that we use to scale the platform based on the events that are taking place on it. So put in what you're hoping to get as attendees, right? If you're aiming for 1,000, put 1,000. If you're aiming for 500, put 500. But this number, again, is something that only you see. Next down is the attendee default password. And this is not a required field, but it's nice to have a default password for your attendees. As you'll see in future videos, when getting your attendees to log into the dashboard, you can have the password default to their email address, and to do that, you would just leave this blank, or you can set up a default password that the attendee uses the first time they log into the event. So that's where you set that. Next up is the fav icon. So this is the icon that appears in the address bar of Chrome or Safari or Edge or whatever browser your attendees are using. It's specifically on the attendee-facing side of the dashboards. Next up is logo, and logo is currently purely cosmetic and only for internal purposes. So on your events page, where you have the various tiles for your event, by default, the logo that appears inside those tiles is the Obvio logo. But if you upload your own logo to this particular area in the event settings page, then those logo tiles, or those tiles, event tiles, will show up as your event logo. And as the amount of events that you have on the platform grow, it allows you to easily find the event through a visual representation of the event you're looking for, which we think is nice. Now, one thing to remember once you make changes to this particular page, make sure you scroll back up to the top and click Save. If you don't click Save and you navigate away from this page, those changes will not be saved. Next up, as we go down the event submenu, is statistics. And statistics is where you have a snapshot of your event. So these top two squares are total number of attendees, as well as some checked-in stats. So on the left-hand side, you see a percentage of how many attendees have checked into your event. And down below, you see the specific number. So in this particular case, we've had 203 attendees checked in, 798 attendees not checked in. On the right-hand side, total attendees, you get total number of attendees inside of this particular event is 1,001. And then right below that, once again, we give you another representation of how many of those attendees have actually checked in. As you scroll down, the next row is going to have 1, 2, or 3 blocks, depending on which check-in pages you have turned on. So there, in this particular case, this event has the password creation page turned on, and that's it. So we have 203 people who have actually created a password, and then 203 people who have actually checked in, along with a little visual bar indicator that fills up as more people check in. If you have the waiver signed turned on, then you will see a third box here that shows how many people have signed your waiver as well. Now, as you scroll down to the next area, you have live on Zoom. And this is where you can see how many people you currently have live inside of Zoom. And it's grouped by areas. Areas are something that you'll learn about probably at a future time if you don't already know what they are. But they're ways that we group our Zoom rooms within the platform. We think of areas as ballrooms as it relates to an in-person live event. So our main stage area currently has 17 attendees in it. And if I click on view rooms, I can see each individual room. And in this case, there's only one room in that area, and how many attendees are currently on live in that room. And then we have another area for this particular event we're looking at, which is Tech Check. And currently there are no attendees inside of Tech Check, and we can still click on view rooms and see that there are 2 2 rooms listed, but of course nobody on them. So that's statistics as it lives right now. There's some additional features and statistics and metrics coming over the course of the coming weeks and months as well. As we scroll down to the next option, you have template. And what template does is template allows you to see which template is currently selected. So right now, the classic template is what we've selected for this particular event. But you can also select one of the other templates to be able to switch your dashboard to those templates. Now, one thing that I would caution you on is try to do this early, because each template has different elements that live in a slightly different way from template to template. So if you were to decide, you know what, I want to go from the classic template to the cards template or the Nifty 50 template, when you do that, everything, all of your data is going to be ported over to that new template, but some of it may not look as intended because you have to go through and just double check that the style and the formatting matches what you had intended when you were switching. So I would definitely say use this particular page with caution, but it does at the very least allow you to see what template is currently available. And this page is very similar to the page that you see the first time you log into your event after you've created it, because you have to select a template in order to actually move forward from this point. So that is the first menu, the event menu, as well as its corresponding submenus. Hope you found this information useful, and we'll see you on the next one.